Andre, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Cool. As I said to Kellen and Bianca when they came in the last time, what we're trying to do here is we're trying to create transparency around the issues in South Africans' financial lives. It's as simple as that. We're trying to provide information and we're trying to help people understand the decisions they're trying to make. We're not trying to tell them how to make those decisions. And I think that's an important distinction in a lot of the stuff you see out there right now. We're not saying choose us. Yes. We're just saying, here's the information, here are the facts, right? Before we get into all of that, I'm so interested to know how you came to be sitting here having this conversation with me. How did you land up at 10X? What's your history?
Yeah, I actually studied something totally different. I want to go into the diplomatic corps. The political situation changed in the late 80s, 90s when I was at university. One of my professors became the cultural attaché in London, and he told us there's a lot of change. It was our history professor. I had a friend that his dad was he did very well as a Sanlam representative, and I heard about third-party sales and insurance and investments, and that piqued my interest. Obviously, I had to go to the army afterwards. I was one of the last that had to do the compulsory army service, went to the army. And then a friend of mine worked at Old Mutual, and he was a financial advisor. And he told me what he was doing, and I contacted Old Mutual, and I said, listen, can I come and see you guys? I went to see the branch manager of Old Mutual. He said, listen, we don't have a job, but give me a few days. And he phoned me a few days later on. He said, you can start as a broker consultant. It was early 90s, and that's how it all got started.
So were you a tied agent then to Mutual? Or
I was a broker consultant servicing financial advisors that had contracts of Old Mutual to obviously market the Old Mutual products. At that point in time, early 90s, was more about the life insurance policies.
Right.
And the investment industry, unit trust plans really only started to take off then.
All right. So Mutual, effectively you were trying to sell life insurance, and there were other things, there were other bolt-on financial products around that as well. But the primary goal was the life insurance.
The primary goal was the life insurance. I found it fascinating, the life insurance, but where I wanted to head I saw the future into investments, and Old Mutual primary business and where they get their revenue from was insurance products and not unit trust plans. And I thought, but that is the plan that's going to give you the returns to retire from in the future. And I try and focus on that portion. And then for some reason, I was headhunted very early in 2002 by a recruiting company in Joburg. And they were looking to set up an investment business. It was 44 ex-Investec employees that broke away from Investec, started a company, independent investment company. And then I was approached and I joined them. And that's exactly what I wanted to do, investments only.
So unit trusts mostly, or were there other?
Unit trusts mostly, but then it was products like preservation funds, retirement annuities, living annuities, and unit trust plans. And that was still actively managed unit trust. That was basically the only investment philosophy that all the investment managers were doing at that point in time.
So it's fair to say that, what was that, mid-90s?
That was early 2000s.
Early 2000s. Yeah. Okay, so early 2000s. So it's fair to say that you've been doing what you've been doing probably for the last 20 years.
Yeah, I think exact about 30 years now.
30 years. Yeah. Okay, specifically investments. So.
Specifically investments.
30 years. All right. So then it's definitely fair to say you've seen pretty much the full gamut of human emotion and situation and investment decisions that it's possible to see.
Very much so. The industry is fascinating. It's a very good industry to be in terms of learning the outcomes and experiences. There's a lot of opportunity within that. And I've worked in small companies. I've worked in large investment managers. I do have a preference, but it's been fascinating. I think the industry is really, over the last 10, 20, 30 years, has really come alight in South Africa. I must say that, for example, in 2008 housing crisis in the US, the South African banks were not affected. So African banking sector and the South African investment industry, I think it's world-class, definitely world-class.
So how would you sum up what you've seen in that time frame about South Africans' attitudes and behaviors when it comes to investing, and specifically investing for retirement?
I must say, I'm a bit disappointed when I do have the conversation with a client that says, I do not like, for example, an RA product, or I have had a bad outcome over many years. So there are clients that's happy. They've been saving diligently for a number of years. And then there are quite a large group of clients that had a disappointing involvement with intermediaries and life insurance companies specifically. The outcome wasn't that great, and they're quite concerned about their retirement. So it's a bit of either elation or a bit of disappointment. And I think it all boils down to a few factors. It's basically the asset allocation decision. They were not really handheld and serviced throughout the journey. And again, the fee impact was not great.
Right. So South Africans as a culture, do we have a savings culture in this country, would you say? Like a thinking for the future, I need to put X amount, I've done my maths, I've done my sums generally, or are we more a live for the day kind of?
Definitely living for the day. I think that's, if we want to, the youth, the unemployed, if we want to elevate them to the next level through education, etc., we should also at school level, grade 11 or 12, that very, very important outcome in the future, retirement, from that age, like 40, 50 years from then, to focus on that. But we don't. We let people go into the world. Some people become professionals, they study university, other people do other training, and other people just looking for a job to put food on the table. We are not educating and highlighting the importance of that retirement. It's going to happen to all of us. We're all going to get there, that we are going to face with retirement, and most of us don't have the capital value to retire from.
It's interesting that at university, even the compulsory courses, when you enter tertiary education, your compulsory courses there are a few of them. If you do a BCom, even if you do a BA in many respects, I think one of them is Profcom or professional communication. So they're teaching you to write an email correctly, but you know nothing about a tax-free savings account or how your RA should, what the underlying asset allocation of your RA should be over time, etc. Isn't that a bit strange?
Very much correct. I mean, my daughter was now at university, and there was a advisor that came to university, believe, as part of the course. She studied something totally different in medical sciences, but came to them and spoke to them for 30 minutes about this. Now, 30 minutes is not enough for a young student or a young adult to grasp that. The second place where I think it goes wrong is when you get employed by your first employer. That HR representative in your company should explain to you, you are now making contributions to your retirement. This is the importance of making these compulsory contributions. This is what the outcome can be. A few scenarios. I mean, that's where you lay the foundation for a person to say, I'm going to do all the other things, in terms of disposable money, but let that deduction go off from my payslip from day one in my working career.
We often talk about preservation funds and the just talking about the working life and the impact of not preserving if you move jobs. Now, you've been saving into a company provident fund, whether you knew what you were doing or not. You've been saving for a few years, and now someone, at least with legislation as it currently stands, it's going to change shortly, but with legislation as it currently stands, you can take that whole amount if you move jobs, correct?
Correct.
Now, for a 25-year-old or a 30-year-old in a situation where now maybe they want a new car, or there are other life pressures or lifestyle pressures being exerted on them, the risk there is that they take that cash and they spend it, right? And they don't know the impact over the next 30, 40, 50 years of even preserving even a small portion of that. And no one's told them.
Yeah. Correct. No, we bring out the 10X retirement reality report every year. I mean, in a very recent one, it was indicated that 71% of all people that took the survey don't have a retirement plan.
And that's a lot of people. That's
a lot of people. Yeah. I mean, we get to that adage of that only 6% of South Africans can retire comfortably. So this is one of the big mistakes. You change jobs, you cash it out. You change jobs, you cash it out. Then in your late 40s or 50s, you realize, listen, I'm 10, 15 years from retirement. Now I'm trying to save. And the percentage is then that you need to save is such a high amount, you actually can't get to that. So changing jobs and not preserving your retirement savings into a preservation fund is one of the big common mistakes that we make in South Africa.
talking about mistakes, and we don't want to scare people. This isn't about, you know, that you're not going to have enough cash, you're going to be out on the street. But I would imagine in your career you've seen some fairly horrific examples of people getting this wrong. You know, are there any that stand out for you as being particularly bad?
I think for me, the main thing is people are not saving enough. People don't save enough. I think there's a view that people only start saving from 28 years old. Then I'm asking a question. You probably started your career at 22 or 23. Why only at 28? Secondly, many South African employers don't have a compulsory pension or provident fund. And thirdly, some of them do, but they don't have a company co-contribution. So if I look at investors at retirement or nearing retirement, then I can see there's a co-contribution by a company of 10, 15%. And then the employee also make a co-contribution. That just rams up that contribution and estimated value quite significantly. So I think one should start very, very early. It's a theme that a topic that we don't discuss enough, retirement. Because, you know, keeping up with the Joneses, living the life now, buying a brand new car, all these things are important now. But it's not going to take you into an independent lifestyle where you can retire with dignity. And that is quite a huge problem. People do not take retirement serious enough.
And it's interesting you say, you know, keeping up with the Joneses. There are ways to, you know, I think I wouldn't say split the difference. Retirement planning and thinking about retirement is super important, as you've highlighted. But also, you don't need to go and buy a new car on credit and suddenly face balloon payments or whatever the case is. You can try and save some cash. You can buy a second-hand car, cash down with no repayments, and then save on the interest that you would have put down on the car. There are ways to create a lifestyle that are cost-effective, separate from retirement planning, and to be honest with you, separate from anything that 10X does. But we don't even discuss those things, right? We don't even discuss a prudent way of organizing your finances. And I never talked to anyone about that at school. I never had those discussions at university. And maybe that was because I was out partying too hard or something, and I wasn't paying attention. But it seems to be a theme amongst my friends, the same thing. No one really has their financial ducks in a row in the way that they could have or should have. You know?
Definitely. I remember like probably 20 years ago, I walked in a hallway at a financial advisor's office. And on the wall, there was something that read, there are only two types of people in life. One that pays interest, paying off debt, or people are receiving interest. And that was very, very powerful in terms of, that's the thing. You get into that debt trap and you just pay interest for life back to the bank. And you never get ahead. So you will never be able to be in a position to save for retirement. You know, depending on your salary, making a contribution of 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 rand might be a step in the right direction. But if you don't have it early on, somebody to assist you or crafting a retirement plan, it's going to be very, very difficult later on in your life.
So maybe you've seen some sort of turnaround stories as well. Maybe a client's come to you, or you've seen in your history with 10X or throughout your career, you know, someone who made a decision to change their life financially and to save the right amount, and you've seen happy outcomes as well. I mean, we don't want to be doom and gloom here.
Yes.
I mean, and it's possible, right?
Yes.
It is possible to turn it around.
Definitely. Definitely. I mean, I always tell clients, make time your best friend. If you have time on your side, you make the contributions diligently and you let the compounding effect take over. So I've seen many, many clients in our conversations that when we get to that forced retirement date at a company for an employee of, say, 60 or 63, and they retire only with 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 5 million even, it's very, very difficult discussions because people want to take the same income as their last income. And your retirement income really depends on what is the capital amount that you've put away. So, but I've seen people over a period of time that have put money away. They put money away in the company umbrella fund, pension fund, as well as in a unit trust plan, as well as in a tax-free savings account, and also in a retirement annuity if they can. And those people, you know, they check in once a year to see if they're still on track. People do understand, especially after COVID, you need to extend your retirement date, work longer, you know, and if it's something that you don't have a specific skill set, you need to go and look. So 5 years from retirement, you need to say, well, if if I'm forced to retire at 65, what can I do thereafter? The days of people going to sit at home 20 years ago, like correctional services, teachers, etc., at 55, it's long gone. I mean, we've got clients in the late 70s, early 80s that are still working at some way or form in a consultancy or take a job that's maybe in the past would have been beyond you as a receptionist, admin clerk, but just keep on saving. And by doing that, you're actually delaying your retirement.
It's a very interesting thing, and we may have touched upon some of these, but if you had to sum up, what are the most important things that people should know, right, that they don't know?
People should know that if you save, what happens in retirement? What is the, I recently did an article on what is the comfortable retirement value or number that you should look at to retire on. Now, that is like a very vague, what is it? What's that amount? But once you get confronted in your 20s, 30s, 40s, or 50s, if you read, you do homework, you educate yourself, you equip yourself with information, and then you have an idea what retirement will be in terms of what's the value to get to. I think people get a kind of a scare, and they pull up their socks, and they really go out to achieve that. So it's very important that we do talk about those type of things. Some of the other things is people follow certain financial providers blindly. Because my dad was with this company and we've always been with this company. It's just something that they are specialists in short-term insurance, they're specialists in medical aids, and they're specialists in the investment industry. Make sure you surround yourself with specialists, and shop around. People are definitely shopping around a lot more, doing their homework. And I must say, that's one of the things that I think is that the financial service industry in the whole did very, very well in terms of providing retirement calculators, providing information. I mean, the amount of articles on any topic in the financial service industry that's on MoneyWeb and other platforms are out there for clients to read through, to go through, and educate themselves.
Okay, so it's a case of actually just taking the reins yourself and be like, I need to actually just figure this stuff out. I need to understand the different products. I need to understand my timeline, my time horizon, and I really need to, like you said, pull my socks up when it comes to that kind of understanding of 65. You might be forced to retire. Like, what do your numbers actually look like?
Yes.
I mean, how many people in a room could actually tell you that?
100%. I get people that, they work for a listed company in South Africa, big or small, and they ask, so I'm working at company X, and I want to know, do you know what pension they're going to pay me? So you've got to tell them, although you've been there for 20, 30 years, it's not they will pay you the pension. Your pension or income in retirement is directly derived from the amount of capital that you contributed over that time and the compounding effect of that. So it's really your money that's going to pay for your pension. And that's why sometimes people don't get that. They don't understand it. I see people only like in the last year or two before retirement really starting to educate themselves. I remember 3 years ago, there was a person retiring from Transnet. And I asked the person, he phoned in, when is your retirement date? And the person said, today. That was the end of a month. Worked for 40 years at Transnet and only started to decide what to do on the last day. That was frightening. That's frightening. So sometimes we have very good conversations with people. We really try and assist them, try and be very objective, putting all the options at retirement on the table. And sometimes we've got to have, unfortunately, a very frank conversation with people. But what's nice, if you speak to people in their 20s and you see, I mean, I know of a person that's 24, about 3 years ago, 24 years old, and this individual told me that he wants to retire, or he wants to, at the age of 30, already have $1 million saved. So once you get into those type of conversations, it gives you a lot of hope. So in the 30s, and throughout all these life stages, you've got different things in terms of your disposable income. You get married, buy the first house, and all of that. It's nice to talk to people in these various age groups and life stages to see how they track regarding to that future retirement date.
So let's talk about that. life stages, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and then you've got retirement. What do you think the trend is? Or how do you think people think about their finances throughout that journey? That's a long period of time, right? Maybe they don't think about it as much as they should. But what do you think is the general trend of how people use their money over that time?
I think what the financial providers need to do, they need to do free educational sessions, either online or for people to come into their offices without wanting something back. Right. So like financial advisor go and see a client, you walk out of here, I want your name, I want you to sign up application form. That's not how we should actually tackle this problem. We need to educate, provide information. That is just a better outcome generally for the whole South African population. So that's what we actually need to do. People need to ask the question amongst the group of friends in their network. How are you tracking towards retirement? Not, I see you bought this new vehicle or did that or going on a holiday and all of that. I mean, it just, that type of thing, going on a holiday, yes, treat yourself, but is it within your comfort in terms of your disposable income? So what people do, half of that will typically be money they've saved and the other half they borrow.
Put on a credit card, maybe.
Put on a credit card, and there you go. So that is definitely a problem. We need to get people more interested in the topic of saving. I remember a few years ago, and this probably 10 years ago, the financial services industry, if you look at people looking for a job at that point in time, there were a few kind of unregistered and not credited financial advisors that did a few things wrong. It was very much highlighted in the news. And people start to look at financial services industry not in the best light. And that's not good for anybody. Not for a client, but also not for the financial services industry. And then about 10 years ago, there was a big effort from the financial services industry to say, this is actually a job that you should actually want to get into as a matric or a young student. Go and study BCom investment management. And when I had a look again, I think it was about 12 or 18 months after that very deliberate action plan, I could see many students then that becoming a financial advisor, a wealth planner, crept back into the list of jobs that people want to do.
So would you say then that the trend in how people spend their money or think about their money throughout their lives, getting 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, is influenced more by their friends and and advertising and societal behavior much more than it should be? And and we're saying it should be influenced a lot more by the aspect of planning and thinking about the future and understanding your numbers. So what you're saying is that actually people are just trying to keep up with the Joneses.
They do. I've got a colleague that deals with a lot of medical professionals. And what he tells me, there's a lot of competition in terms of assets, what do they buy, whether they go on holiday and all of that. So I think what young people should do, just get in touch, because they are so used to getting information online. It's there, and they're investing perhaps in something like in Bitcoin or offshore. But it's not there's no tax benefit in doing that. It's very speculative. And it's not the right first retirement investment product for them.
There's no foundation.
There's no foundation.
Yeah.
So that's something that you do additionally. So first get a foundation in place. Do my employer have a compulsory pension or provident fund? The golden rule. Make contributions. If you make contributions of at least 15% over a 40-year career, you will retire comfortably, independently. Then you look at additional things like tax-free savings account, buy a few shares on platforms, those type of things. But you shouldn't start too late. But even if you're in your 40s or 50s and you've now realized, some headwinds coming in the next 10, 15 years, it's never too late to start. All you need to do then is just delay your retirement with a few years.
You mentioned tax, right? And this is a discussion I think that isn't understood at all in the South African sort of populace, and when it comes to investing, specifically around retirement products and specifically around, let's take for example a retirement annuity, right? There are huge tax benefits to investing. Forget you're going to be more comfortable in retirement, but let's just talk about those tax benefits. How does the tax benefits that an RA allows actually benefit you as a South African?
Definitely. I referred back to medical professionals. We've seen quite a big uptake of the retirement annuity investment vehicle by medical professionals specifically. They do understand, and this is the benefit of RA. A few things. The big benefit is all contributions you make, up to 27.5% of all contributions are tax deductible. Now, for a medical professional, for anybody who's got their own business, for anybody out there, that's a huge tax break. And you can potentially get a tax refund when you do your tax on e-filing. Furthermore, it falls outside of your estate. For business owners, your RA is protected from your creditors. Very, very important. And it's investment vehicle that grow within the investment vehicle, the RA kind of environment tax-free. So there are very, very many benefits by investing in a retirement annuity, as specifically.
So let's just talk about that tax-free growth. I don't think that concept is understood because people, if they sell a house, they bought a house for a certain price, and then they sell the house, they're going to pay a capital gains tax on that growth, effectively in the asset, right? You're saying growth in the RA isn't taxable.
Correct.
Yeah,
that's correct. So generally, if you have a unit trust plan, you have a share portfolio, there will be potential dividend withholding tax, income tax, or capital gains tax. It's like money in a bank account. People say, I get a good interest rate of 9%. Yes, but that's before tax. Placing in a retirement annuity, you have the tax benefits, and your growth will be tax free. That compounding again over time is hugely understood, and that's something we should put a lot of emphasis on that.
It's also the case that the growth in the tax-free savings account vehicle is also tax-free. And that is, Kellen used the phrase on the last video podcast we shot, talking about kind of a new kid on the block when it comes to the investment wrapper, right? Maybe just dive into that a little bit for people who are listening.
No, 100%. National Treasury said we've got a very poor savings culture in South Africa. Very poor savings culture. So they said, what is the carrot we can hold in front of South Africans to make them understand this is something you can invest into for your own future? Because we don't want people to be solely dependent on the old age grant. It's not even 2,000 Rand a month currently. So it started off as 30,000 Rand per annum. It's now 36,000 Rand per annum that any individual in South Africa can invest in a tax-free savings account per annum. 36,000. It doesn't matter if it's 500 Rand a month or 3,000 Rand a month or a 36,000 Rand lump sum. As long as it's 36,000 and below, that is totally tax-free. So but you have to have an investment goal for that. Are you saving for a deposit for a car or for a house, 5 years, 10 years? Is it for children? Very popular from grandparents as a gift to grandchildren for studies for the next 18 years. Totally tax-free. I mean, that is a gift being handed to South Africans, and we should make use of that. So over your lifetime, it's 500,000 that you can contribute. Like I said, the 30,000 became 33,000 per annum, then 36. So we do believe that the 500,000 total lump sum over your lifetime will also be increased. And I don't think that's far away in terms of that. So people ask me, what's the best investment vehicle? I'm in my 20s or 30s or 40s. Is it RA tax-free? It's a combination of both. So make the RA contribution in terms of lowering your tax liability, and then also for liquidity, meaning having access to capital, make contributions into a tax-free savings account.
Another thing I don't think people fully understand about a tax-free savings account is that there can be many different types of underlying assets in that tax-free savings account. You can, for argument's sake, go 100% offshore, if I'm not wrong, correct? So you get to choose, you can get to choose, and there are many different providers with many different types of funds that sit underneath that wrapper, right? And I don't think, because the name tax-free savings account sounds like a savings account in your bank account. So it sounds like a little savings pocket where you're going to get a fixed rate return or something like that. But it's not that. It's an investment product, right?
Totally correct. So when the tax-free savings account came out, banks can provide that, and investment managers can provide it. The banks were very clever, so they targeted their existing, check account and home loan account, credit card clients. Very, very, very good at that. If you're sitting in an interest rate type of tax-free savings account, and you have got a very short-term investment horizon, 1 to 3 years, might be suitable. But for a 5-year and longer investment horizon, you should be actually have allocation to shares, to equities, offshore in SA. So yes, you are correct. You can invest 100% offshore in, for example, in the US or a broad index of international companies with that. So I tell people that because you're limited within your retirement annuity, your company pension or provident fund, Regulation 28 of the Pension Funds Act only allows you a maximum of 45% offshore. Why don't you use the tax-free savings account and get that offshore? First world exposure to shares like Nvidia and Apple and Alphabet and Meta and all of that. And that's a smaller portion of your overall holistic portfolio. And as a South African, you kind of hedge yourself against the declining rand against the dollar. So it's a good outcome. But a tax-free savings account should be something you invest into with an investment goal in the future.
Let's talk about the underlying investment structure of an RA. You mentioned Regulation 28, that's the Pension Funds Act. It says that retirement investment products can only invest certain amounts of capital in certain areas. What does that say broadly? What are those areas and what are the sort of restrictions that apply?
I like the Regulation 28, the fact that there's some regulation preventing people to invest more than 45% offshore, or preventing people to investing more than 75% offshore. The reason why I'm saying this is that I remember in 2002, 2003, when the rand was declining, everybody and their dog wanted to invest offshore. I remember specifically during the end of that year in December, before I went on leave that year, people were actually borrowing money from the bank, or wanted to. And I was just not comfortable with that, with specifically old lady.
They wanted to borrow money from the bank to invest.
To go offshore. Right. Because it was all the hype of Zim and all of that, And that's not how you make rational investment decisions. You invest offshore based on, you want exposure to first world, we just 0.5% of the total world economy in South Africa. So if you want offshore, that is diversification and randage. That's what you do.
So just to be clear for those who don't understand the sort of shorthand for that, rand hedging would be hedging against the decline of the South African rand, where the majority of your assets are invested. Correct. Yeah.
So correct. So sometimes you've got to protect people from themselves.
Right.
Because in South Africa, you get a hot tip at a braai, or you read something, and then you want to invest all of that. You cannot invest your retirement annuity 100% in the Southeast Asia, IT stock, or whatever the case. So you need to give certain guidelines. Remember that these type of investment products are not just there for one individual. It's for all of us. There are guidelines that transition you from a retirement annuity then into a living annuity or life annuity in the future. So there have to be certain rules. SARS gives you the benefit of the tax refund, and then you stay within the Reg 28 guidelines. So I think it's a great investment vehicle. Some people feel they didn't have a great outcome. Well, that points back to multiple layers of cost. That points back to poor asset allocation. That points back to there was no financial advisor that hold your hand throughout this process with an annual review. And that is to say, where are you now? This is what we've done over the last year or 2 years. This is where we're heading towards. Do we need to change anything, yes or not? For me, that the concern on the retirement annuity is not the product. Not the asset. It can be the asset allocation. It's not the restrictions. It's how we interact with clients in the financial industry that's not transparent. And we know that that's not going to give them the best outcome. If I look at clients' retirement annuity statement, we do cost comparisons on a daily basis. And they still hold like the general investment funds, unit trust funds in there. And then my question, obviously, dear Mr. Client or Mrs. Client, when was the last time you saw your financial advisor? And the answer is very much the same. I don't know, probably 5 or 10 years ago. This is a plan. This is fluid. It needs to work for the client, not just for the intermediary or the financial services provider.
So we've talked about the tax benefits of a retirement annuity. We've talked about contributing and getting, some tax back on those contributions. And you mentioned that retirement annuity contributions don't form part of your estate.
Yes.
Okay. So it's not perhaps the nicest question or something people want to think about, but estate planning is a big issue towards, the end of your life.
Yeah.
What are the main considerations around estate planning, and especially around retirement, finances in South Africa?
Estate planning is real and it's very relevant for all clients in investing. Tax and death, death and taxes. That's going to be something that's going to hit you. Taxes most of the time, and death is going to come at some point in time. So when I set up a meeting with a high net worth client, especially in Joburg, when I go to Joburg and I see clients there, I prefer to see them at their house with the spouse sitting next to them, and we talk through this. So I like that because then I can say, this is going to happen. If they don't pose the question, I bring it up. This is going to happen, and what's the impact of that? What's the estate duty and tax implications? What happens? So estate duty, it's going to hit all of us when we pass away. So all assets will be deemed to be in your estate that you will pay tax on. Only the first 3.5 million will be excluded from estate duty, and then amounts up to 30 million will be 20% taxed in terms of estate duty. And therefore, retirement investment products or vehicles like a preservation fund, a retirement annuity, a living annuity are exempt from estate duty. So there are a lot of benefits by being into a compulsory or contractual retirement product. And estate duty is definitely one of them. So you might have a lot of assets, houses, primary, secondary home. There might be a boat, cars, various things. A share portfolio. All of these will attract estate duty. So what you need to do is you need to actually lighten your estate duty responsibility by investing into a retirement product that can give you the living annuity to provide income at the end, which would fall outside of your estate. And that's one of the big benefits when we talk to clients in terms of what do you want to do when you retire? I want sufficient income. I want to leave a legacy. And I want my investment vehicle to not form part of my estate.
It's worth stressing again, we're not telling people what to do with their money. We're trying to tell them that there are options, and that we're trying to give them a view of the things that they need to think about. And you want to think about your kids. You want to think about your family, right? And again, I think this is something that you mentioned previously, was that at some point you're going to have to make the decision to take your retirement savings and to go into a living annuity or a guaranteed annuity or some combination thereof. And as you've just mentioned, that investment or those contractual agreements do not form part of the estate. So they are estate duty exempt, right?
Yes.
Yet another good reason to consider those as a retirement option. But talking about a living annuity and a guaranteed annuity, if I look at the comments that we received on the living annuity webinar we did a while back, I look at the comments that come on social media and that people submit to us via Facebook Messenger, etc. There seems to be there seems to be a lot of misunderstanding about the two products and how they might cohere, what the options are. Do you need one or the other? Can there be a combination? How do you set yourself up for optionality going forward? How should people think about this? What are the main factors here?
Very important that people weigh up both. Which product will be more suited to that individual? Is it a life annuity, where it's all about the income and the guarantee? Is it about a living annuity with the flexibility and many benefits? Or is it going to be a hybrid or combination? So at 10X Investments, we do provide both options. Many times when a client says, I want a quote from you for both a life and a living. And I said, we only provide the living annuity. I said, but you promote or you talk about your market, about the life annuity. I said, yes, because that's how we want you to make an objective decision on this. And that's why we educate and inform all people coming through to us or just on our website for people to know these are the options. You cannot just inform about one of the two. So the life annuity, when the interest rates goes up, like from January 2022, US 40-year high inflation, they kind of countered that by increasing interest rates. That led to high guaranteed rates over the last 2 years. In the previous 14 years, we hardly had any client reaching out for a life annuity. And then they started to pick up mid-2022. So the life annuity or guaranteed annuity, like I've said, it's all about income. So your capital value is not going to increase. But what the life insurers do is they look at your age, are you male or female, and what's the guaranteed rate currently. So in the week that you sign the paperwork with a life insurance provider, that's the guaranteed rate income that you're going to get. Now, the typical life annuity, if you pass away, that money will fall back to the life insurance provider. So you need to bring in a 5 or a 10 or a 20-year term. You need to ask the question, is it going to, in terms of inflation, will it escalate? And if you do escalate your monthly income, that will lower your initial monthly amount. Those type of things are very important. Then on the other hand, so the guaranteed rates are currently quite good, with the expectation that the American Federal Reserve will decrease interest rates from September, and South Africa will follow suit. The guaranteed rates will potentially look different at the end of the year or next year. The living annuity, on the other hand, is more flexible. It's about the income that you can take, which is flexible and can be changed annually on the anniversary date, and also about the capital amount and also the legacy. So when we speak to people, and still, 85% of people still select the living annuity. They want to, that 5 million initial investment and taking a sustainable income drawdown, they want to grow that capital amount because they understand the potential impact of inflation over time. So that, and leaving the legacy. So there are certain rules. So for a living annuity, you can select income from a minimum of 2.5% to a maximum of 17.5% of the capital value. 5% or less is seen as sustainable income drawdown. That means it will not deplete the chance of that depleting your capital is very, very small over time. And then also you in consultation with the provider will make a decision on your asset allocation, which is very, very important. You can have exposure to SN offshore equities, bonds, and cash, or a combination of. And then on an annual basis, you change your income around your specific personal circumstances. I've seen many times the flexibility of a living annuity, how it worked for a client. One specific example is a person retired with us 7 years ago. He's from Port Elizabeth. He's in his early 70s. And in 2022, after COVID, he wanted to go and see his grandchildren in New Zealand. His son is an actuary there, and he had a monthly income. So if he was in a life annuity, that's it. He would probably never went. But because he was in a living annuity, he could change his monthly income to annual income. We paid the annual income in advance, booked two tickets for him and his wife, came back, and the next year changed it back to a monthly income. So those are just some of the examples where the flexibility of a living annuity worked quite well. I always tell clients, when I come back in January after annual leave in December, I usually go and see what was the initial investment amount for clients, what's the growth for the last 12 months, and where are they now. And I am still surprised by the growth, depending on the term. I mean, the longer you've been with us and invested in the market, the higher your returns would be. Some of them I just can't believe. I remember the last time I spoke to you, your amount was, say, X. Now it's Y. It's quite higher due to the time you've spent, the fact that you gave your money to be exposed in terms of asset allocation in the market to receive growth from that. So that is a very good idea in terms of making sure you have the flexibility to amend your income. You will definitely at death leave the capital value to your nominated beneficiaries and you increase your investment value.
You mentioned something interesting there about capital depletion, right? A sustainable drawdown rate, I think was the phrase you used. And this is something we spoke about in the previous podcast as well, where we're trying to coin this phrase, the golden equation. And if this sticks in people's head, I hope it does. On one side of the equation are your drawdowns, the impact of inflation, and the fees you pay on your investment. On the other side of the equation are the returns on that investment, right? And if you are equal to or less than the return on your investment, your capital stays the same and you don't deplete your capital. But if those things in combination are greater than, you're going to start eating into that capital. And I don't think that's something that's understood at all by people who are investing for retirement, and you must have seen this firsthand.
Seen it many, many times. So when you go into retirement, there are three controllables. One is your asset allocation, meaning how your 100 Rand is going to get invested. what your drawdown is going to be, what your fees will be, within your control. Get it right. Two, outside of your control will be inflation and the market returns. So do agree. I just want to get back to something in terms of living annuity and life annuity. If you go into a life annuity at a specific guaranteed rate and the rates go up again in the future, you're stuck. You are in that rate that you sign up for that week.
You're talking about inflation going up in future.
Or the guaranteed rates go up.
Oh, the guaranteed rate.
You lock in, let's say, 7%.
Okay.
2, 3, 5 years later, there's the guaranteed rates go up again. You get locked in that previous rate of 5 years ago in that week you signed up 5 years ago. And in a life annuity, you cannot transfer out to anything else. You can't transfer to a new life annuity with a better guaranteed rate or to a living annuity. So life annuity, capital value stays the same, and you get paid income from that. The living annuity, you can always, in your later years, when the rate's in 10, like I said, for 14 years, we didn't have inquiries about this. If it comes back again, high inflation, high guaranteed rates, and you want to transfer, you're more risk averse, you want a guaranteed rate and a guaranteed income, you can always transfer later on at a specific time your living annuity
into
to a life annuity.
Into the guarantee.
All right, so not the other way around. So that's just an important aspect to take into consideration. Then also you can split when you retire from a pension or provident fund or retirement annuity. At that point, you can also split some of your money into a life annuity and some of it into a living annuity. You can also have more than one living annuity. If you decide to come to our investment living annuity, you can have more than one living annuity. We've seen that. So I'm highlighting all of these things because people don't know. People don't know, for example, that once you are in a living annuity with a provider and it's underperforming and you see you're paying high fees, you can transfer your existing living annuity from one provider to another provider living annuity. It's called a Section 50 transfer. So those are the type of things that's very important. Many times clients are actually astounded that we tell them you can transfer living annuity from one provider to another, or you can have multiple living annuities. People just do not know that.
Also, something that I heard that I didn't know, and I even work in the industry now, was that if I'm taking the minimum drawdown from a living annuity, which is 2.5%, as you've mentioned, and let's say that's a little bit too much for me, I can reinvest that money into a retirement product.
Yes.
Correct? Yeah.
Correct. So we do have some individuals. They retire from a retirement product. They've got their own business. So the living annuity product is just a kind of an add-on to their income. They take that, as you said, they take that monthly income from the living annuity, reinvest it in the retirement annuity, get a tax deduction, and then a year or 2 or 3 years later, they retire that amount back into the living annuity. Firstly, they got a tax deduction. They've lowered their tax liability, and they've increased their lump sum amount into a living annuity. Yeah, we do get that a lot. It's called a 1-month RA, but it doesn't need to be retiring from that immediately by paying in a lump sum. You can also build that up over a few years and then retire from that.
What would you say, changing tack slightly, are sort of the top misconceptions South Africans have about retirement? We've talked about not saving enough and actually not just doing your numbers, but outside of that, what do people think that could potentially just be flat out wrong?
I've highlighted earlier on the fact that people believe that their company are responsible for their retirement income in retirement. It's not the case. Your retirement value will dictate the income that you take. Some of the other things that people are sometimes a bit pessimistic in terms of their growth expectations because they had a past history on a product that didn't work out for them. And people go, and the first tip or exceptional growth that they hear from, they go for that. So that is not sound investment planning. Hope is not a good investment strategy. A trusted plan with an end goal where you sit with somebody to help you and look at aspects like asset allocation, fees, where you want to get to. Those are the important things. It's for me, it's just fascinating how people will actually lend out their ears to unscrupulous advisors. Every time there's something in the news on this happened, ask the question, was this person registered with the FSCA, Financial Watchdog? Was this a registered product? Was it a registered financial advisor? Those type of things. If it's too good to be true, it's definitely that. So make sure that you've got a plan in place. And just a misconception, people think that an amount of 2 or 3 million are a good enough amount to retire on. People don't realize they might spend decades in retirement. Decades in retirement. And then you see, I mean, I know of people, they used to be very wealthy, took a high drawdown from their discretionary investments and living annuities. They now sit in a 4 or 5 million rand house that they can't sold because there's no demand. And then they've got no money to live on. And that is something that stares them in the face. Now, for an old person, their health is diminishing. They're becoming more risk averse and nervous, and they don't have a retirement capital. So get it right early on, educate yourself, empower yourself to be in a very good position that you don't have to move in with your kids or relatives.
So we talked about the things you should do when it comes to your retirement planning, right? Starting early, very important. Understanding the tax implications of actually making these contributions. Understanding that the South African government has actually tried to help you to save through the tax-free savings account.
Yeah.
We've spoken about some of the misconceptions people have around retirement. What are some of the biggest mistakes people make when it comes to their retirement? Flat out, I've made the wrong choice here.
I would say following the advisors or the investment professionals blindly. Do not get suckered into a retirement product based on the many golf days you attended or the lunches. Do not get bowled over by the graphs, because the financial services industry in general is a very sound and healthy industry. There are very many good financial professionals. But there's also people that are commission driven. So they want to go, I come to your house, your work, I do the overview, I show you graphs, I impress you. The jargon in the financial services industry. People are not specialists in that industry. But many times we put graphs, historic returns, or this wording to them. They don't understand it because it's complicated, not transparent. They believe us. That's the financial planner. And they sign up. So do not fall for that. Do your homework. Go and see a few financial advisors in preparation for your ultimate retirement, or even if you're on your journey towards retirement. Talk to people in the financial service industry. And if they repeat the words like diversification, retirement plan, save more, low fees, those type of things, those themes need to come out every time. Then you know you're on the correct track. I've seen clients in terms of practical experience that sit with a value of, say, 20 million, been with a specific financial company, and then they're down at 13 million rand, and this person early 70s. Now we've got to come to us and say, they come to us and you need to get my money back to the 20 million. Now, how did it in the first place end up by dwindling down? It decreased in quite a significant investment value. You're following things that impressed you at the time. I always say to people, do not fund somebody else's retirement. Fund your own. Look after your own best interest. So doing your homework, weighing options up, doing at least once a year a cost comparison, just to find out, a no obligation, free cost comparison. Find somebody, a financial provider, that will do that for you. I mean, you go for an annual health check, or you go to the dentist. Why not do an annual financial health check on your investments? Those are very, very important things that you need to go through routinely. Do not put your head in the sand. Those are the things that's very, very important to do. Talk to your children, your relatives, specifically your children, on this is the position you're in. How you can have a better outcome for them. If you're successful in your retirement savings, tell them how you go about how you did it. And if you're not, be honest with them. Say, I didn't save enough, I didn't start enough, and it's going to be a bleak future. Be very, very honest. These are some of the things that we just, within family groups, there's a long history that people do not talk about this, about death, taxes, and not about retirement savings. People think, oh, my house is worth millions, and I'm gonna, but if you scale down, you're gonna you sell a house for millions, you're gonna buy into something that's also gonna cost millions. So there's no capital amount on the side that's gonna take you through retirement for the next few decades.
This theme of not talking about finance is something that comes up a lot. And in my family, we didn't talk about finances or what the best way to arrange your finances was. And I think that's, it's powerful to hear someone who works in the financial services industry saying that, because people don't hear that. We aren't open with each other about how we save and how we spend. And I think that's key. I think that conversation should start with the family, and I'm glad that you highlighted that. Do you find that that people maybe have a rosier, put on their rose-tinted glasses about retirement and think that everything's going to be all right, they're going to continue in the same sort of vein with their health, etc.? Maybe they underestimate their expenses. Are there any other mistakes or short-sightedness that you see from people who are retiring?
I think it's a lack of acknowledging there's going to be a problem.
Right.
So we live in the moment, we live in the year, we live in the next 5 years. We get so busy with life, work, family, hobbies, and we don't acknowledge. We know it's going to be a problem, but we don't own up to the reality that it might be a problem. And I think that's the mistake that many people make. You see the wealthy people. I mean, I've seen people I've met with enormous capital amounts. I remember this very specific client, still a client of ours for a long period now. I met this person 2 years ago, Joburg, at a meeting, walked out, and the person had a car, just a normal, didn't expect this vehicle to be, I'm not going to name the make, but it was an old car. But inside a meeting, this person told me, he's a medical professional, that they don't live a lavish lifestyle. Jewelry, watches, clothing, it's not something, they don't do that. He saves, they save. And, to see actually, what he just told me, to see it in real time. This is actually what a person just told me 15, 20 minutes ago. I'm driving an old vehicle, no debt, no car payments, any of the sort. They look towards their future. That's the opposite than not owning up. People are generally not owning up and hope that by some miraculous way, they will be in a good position to retire.
And hope is not a good retirement
Hope is not a good strategy. Hope is a terrible investment strategy because the longer you take to own up to that, and then I see many, many people very close to retirement or at retirement age when we have the conversations, they go into total depression. I've had a person about a year ago didn't want to acknowledge the fact that amount, still 5 million, but to sustain that lifestyle. If you tighten your belt on day one in terms of retirement, I always tell people, do your budget. So you've got 5 million as an example. What's your expenses on a monthly basis? Do the budget. So you give me a number of say 20 or 30 or 50,000 rand monthly income. It's not going to work out. Do the budget. What can you live without? And if people, I see now many years later, people did the budget or they already knew, they tightened the belt significantly. They live a very comfortable retirement. But if it's generally said that if you can have 75% of your last salary as a replacement of your last salary, you will be in a good position. Very few people can get to that. So it's important to understand what's the retirement value at the end if you retire 10, 20, 30 years from now. And it's also important to understand in today's terms, what do I need as a rand amount to live comfortably?
Because I mean, what you're investing now and the growth you're seeing on your investments now are going to be hit by inflation. Your buying power is going to decrease in 20 years' time, right? So you need to make allowances for that as well. So you need to save against that, and then understand again, like you just said, cut what isn't 100% necessary.
Yeah.
And then also by making those cuts, potentially, there's money to reinvest. There's money to see that capital amount grow even when you're retired. If you're in the right product and you have the right mindset around those investments, you can actually make those retirement savings grow as well.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. So again, it's basic principles. You stick to them with the retirement plan and the goal. You'll get there. And that's the important things.
Do you think people feel intimidated though? I mean, this is the major factor, isn't it? That's why they're going to an intermediary. That's why they're coming. That's why they're even talking to you, because they want some sort of sounding board. Right?
They want sounding board, and we have to have very direct conversations. I'm amazed when a person comes and they have a high value, then I applaud them and I ask them, "What did you do? How did?" And you go about, and it's the same answer. And how did you people how? You don't want to put a person on the spot by kind of let them know, they haven't saved enough. So now you say, listen, it might not be it could have been better. So it's a nice way to say that, but now that's it. Now you've got to work out a plan to work with them to understand that, all right, we need to move forward from here. And that is difficult one. And it's when people want to take too much income from day one, and that is going to be a problem. We have very few living annuity clients that takes more than 6%. Very few. When the product came out 20 years ago, you could draw between 5 to 20%. Advisors were mainly about the commission. Clients didn't know this. They didn't know what's the impact of sustainable capital drawdown. And the values were depleted. The industry came out and said 2.5 to 17.5. There were talks about 5 to 7 years ago, if you have this amount, you can only withdraw in this rates. But that would never have worked, You're
taking away the flexibility you're talking about in the product.
Yeah. So it is an interesting job and environment we're in, because one conversation can be total, wow, this person did so well. I can see a very comfortable retirement.
What was the answer? You said the answer is very similar for those people who've done well. They come and have the
very diligently.
Diligent savers.
Very.
That's it.
They've saved. They said, I had this, this is my goal. We come from a family of savers.
Right. So now the previous behavior in the family, right.
Good house, good education. I'll sort my kids' education out. That's one of my priorities. We don't live lavish lifestyles. We don't eat at restaurants. We don't go 4 times a year on expensive holidays. All of that. I've worked very hard for a long time, but I've saved. I put money away. And then the compounding effect of that. And people with a large amount want to be they want to be rewarded with low fees or a decent fee. They don't want to pay high fees anymore.
But they also understand that that's compounding working against them. Because they've been saving for so long, they've seen the effects and they know what the difference between high and low fees. But the majority of South Africans don't know that difference. And especially people who are younger, who will just go in blindly into whatever product at whatever fee structure without even thinking about that.
You see, the thing is, many people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, they come from an environment, they went to the same school. They were this guy that, provincial colors, this guy was the head boy, this guy, then you go to varsity and the same happens, you excel there, and you don't want to be left behind. Even if somebody you were great, you were good, or you're average, but there was always somebody that did better than you in something. So now you kind of, the old boys club or friends, you had at a school, and your toddlers, your children go to pre-primary, you had a school. Now it's still that competition. That competition impact. Now that's a lot more in the professional industry, but you always want to outperform by showing off. And that is the problem. I mean, there are people that, very professionals that don't have they're in their 40s or 50s, their amount is still not high enough. And then the opposite is. People that just don't care about material things. It's important. They have a solid house, they live there and there in a car, but it's not the most expensive or not the Bantry Bay. It's decent. They look after their families. But the investment, that deduction goes off first.
Yes.
The contribution towards my retirement goes off first. My life insurance is in place. Short-term insurance is in place. My medical aid. That goes off first. When I ask the question to many retirees, what is your biggest or single biggest, when they've already retired, they come through to us. And now they're looking at options, returns are not there. And I ask them, what's your biggest or single biggest monthly expense? There's food. Are you sure? What's your medical aid? Okay, 8,000. Okay, you've got 11 years, you're 5 million. What's your expense? Oh, it's actually my living duty product.
The fees you're paying.
The fees that you pay. The fees that you pay. People don't realize that because they get told it's 1% or 2.5%. They don't bring it back to a rand amount. They don't bring it back on a rand amount because on your deduction on your medical aid or your life insurance policy, or that many times you went to Woolies, you can see it from your bank account. But your deduction on your living duty doesn't show on your bank statement. So you can't see it. So you visualize 1% or 2%, but you've never actually transformed that percentage to a rand amount, so you don't know.
1% sounds tiny.
Exactly.
Yeah. 2.5% sounds tiny. 3% sounds tiny. Yeah.
And that's the thing. So people need to work that EAC. They need to understand, what does this mean?
Effective annual cost.
What does this mean? Yeah. What is the fees that I'm currently paying? And clients are told that, no, you cannot transfer your living duty out to another provider because they want to keep that business within that provider group. So if you think you don't have a choice or option, you're not going to pursue it. People are definitely more informed. They shop around, they speak to us, and with us, if we can help a client, even if you make a decision that's not investing with us, we've done well. I mean, I remember many years ago, we went to BMW on the day that South Africa was downgraded by the rating agencies in Pretoria. They were building the new X3 then. And we went in, and the first question I asked was, so what is your investment philosophy? How are you going to change your investment philosophy based on the fact that South Africa was downgraded this morning? And the person I was with, the then CEO, said nothing, because that's already priced in. We knew it's going to happen. You do not, react knee-jerk towards negative news, because what's going to happen, there's something else going to be next week and next month. So you don't plan for what's immediately happening. You plan for the medium to long term. That's how you invest. Medium to long term. All the other decisions we've made, strategic asset allocation, the weightings, all of that's aligned to your medium to longer term investment goal. But you'll always have these short term things.
But what you said there that was interesting is pay your future self first.
Yes.
That stuff comes off first.
Yeah.
Your RA, whatever is about your future saving has to come off the paycheck when you get the paycheck.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's the way the majority of people think. I think whatever's left over, I'll save.
Exactly.
And there's never anything left over.
No, definitely. A couple of years ago, there was quite a 15 to 10 years, probably still 7 years ago, short-termism was a real thing. People were just, my investment, something happened with the Chinese government clamping down on 10 cent, and that had an impact on our present process, and my investment value went down. So immediately they just, okay, I need to look for something else. I need to buy another share, or I need to go into another portfolio with another provider. I mean, COVID, that was like when things like that happened, 2008, you were inundated, all the providers, phone calls, this is a bad investment, I want something else, But I remember 2020 with COVID, although we went lockdown, there wasn't that immediate communication with people like it used to be, but people were still getting the news and they could still contact us and send emails. There were hardly any clients because they understood that these events externally will happen. more frequently and from time to time. And didn't we have an interesting ride the last 5 years in terms of external events? But people started to understand it's not just now and what happened just today. It's also what's happening over the longer term. And external events will have an impact. I mean, last Friday, US low employment data, and then the Japanese yen carry trade. Our markets were luckily closed over that period already, Friday late afternoon, SA time, and over the weekend. Otherwise, the impact internationally was like -10. Some of the companies went down. The JC Oil share was only minus 1.19 on Monday. So kind of, you've got to understand where it comes from. It was a total overreaction in financial markets. I mean, I always say, it depends on what people read on the Sunday newspaper and how the Springboks play. That will be the mood on the Monday. So, and you must also look at what is the agenda. If somebody writes an article on, oh, Bitcoin is now going to be registered, or invest 100% offshore, or South African equities crap, you've got to understand what's the agenda of that. There's very much in the financial services industry a lot of themed base. We have a fund, it doesn't get any inflows. Let's kind of throw all our marketing budget behind that, and let's go for that. If it's fourth industrial revolution, if it's this or that, they go for it.
AI.
But it's just a theme for a short period to bulk up the assets under management and the revenue. So that's not how medium to longer investment. Those are not the things they should be looking out for. And that's investing it's hard. It can be complicated. What it should be is, it should be transparent. You should be informed, and the outcome should be to your benefit. I mean, I can't believe that in South Africa still, today, 2024, we're still the only company that on an investment statement gives a client the growth and the gross and the net return. Of all the providers, the gross and the net return on your investment statement, nobody else wants to do that because they will be shown up. If you look at a fund fact sheet, 10% growth, what does that mean? What does that mean? What's the net return? The most important thing for a client is, what is my net return? Because everybody invests at a different date. That initial starting date is a different date to the next person. So your 10% on a fund fact sheet doesn't mean anything over 1 year if I've invested 9 months or 6 months or 5 years. Combined with that, what's my net return? What is my net return? And those are important things clients are definitely asking and confronting. And I've had a few stories of people said, my financial advisor is my best friend. We've been friends for a long time. They've looked after my whole family. But we had a conversation and we're switching. And those are okay, you're looking after so have a conversation, stay friends, but you need to look after your own future. So those are the things that's really happening today.
Awesome.
Okay.
I think we've got some epic stuff. Thank you. Thank you for the time and the chats. That was brilliant.